What is the most resilient parasite? A bacteria? A virus? An intestinal worm?
What Mr. Cobb is trying to say.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks.
The problem with most people is that they don't believe something can happen until it already has. It's not stupidity or weakness. It's just human nature. The problem with most people is that they don't believe something can happen until it already has. It's not stupidity or weakness. It's just human nature. The problem with most people is that they don't believe something can happen until it already has. It's not stupidity or weakness. It's just human nature. The problem with most people is that they don't believe something can happen until it already has. It's not stupidity or weakness. It's just human nature.
Third time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
Okay guys, this is my final video that I'm posting on YouTube. Yes, you heard that right. This is my last video. And before I exit, I'm going to leave you with some final thoughts about what's going on. Because since I posted my last public video, the world has gone and lost its mind. And there are a lot of people that have no idea what is really happening and what this means. So I'm going to leave you with some final thoughts about that in this video. So this video might be kind of long, but if you've watched any of my content, I really encourage you to stick it out and listen, because there's some things you need to know about what's happening and what that means for your near future. But before I go into the coronavirus, because seriously, what else is there to talk about right now? Because that's what everyone is thinking about, and that is what is the most important thing that's impacting every single person of the world's lives. I want to say this, that I don't regret one decision I've made during this journey. Moving to a membership website is what enabled me to do what I love and not have to work 2 jobs while I'm doing it. It has allowed me to be fully prepared to survive the EMPCOE and also prepare for my sons to survive. And finally, it allowed me to spend my last few years of the blue sky system with the love of my life. So, though I received a lot of criticism and a lot of hate over my decision, I would never take it back. It was absolutely the right decision, because I refused to sell out like so many YouTubers, and I was going to stick to my moral compass and do what I believed was right. And the only way to survive and do that was to move to paid memberships. And for everybody that thought $333 was such a massive amount and you refused to pay even though you knew we were right, let me tell you what $333 would have bought you. If you would have signed up at the beginning, when I first started my website in November of 2018, you would have literally spent less than $1 a day to the point we're at now. You would have known to be prepared, and you would have known exactly what to do. We told our people on our websites over a year ago that they need to be buying supplies and food, and that there was going to be a food shortage coming. So now, where the rest of the world has either empty store shelves or limits on what they can buy, our members were fully stocked before the shelves went empty, and they knew exactly what to buy. You would have known exactly what was happening the minute they came out with the coronavirus, and you would have known why. You would have also known everything else you need to know about how this ties in to the world we live in and how it relates to the EMPCOE catastrophe that we've been talking about for the past 2 years. I also want to say this, that when Brian walked into my life 2 years ago, and I got to speak with him about what he knew and the things that he could prove, I knew it was the truth. And we tried to warn people for 2 years about what was coming and explain to people how that is. But we were met with hate, disdain, insults, slander, everything you could possibly experience when people are throwing hate your way. And we did it anyway. We knew what we were in for. We knew how this was going to turn out, but we did it anyway for the few that could listen. You know, if you don't understand the big picture, if you don't understand how your world really works and who is in charge, then you can never understand what is really happening around you and why that's happening. If you only have a piece of the puzzle, you're going to be left in complete confusion, because you have to see the whole picture to understand what is really going on and who is doing it. And if you understood that, you would kind of be able to grasp how huge the deception really is, how big the conspiracy really is, and how they can pull something like this off so brilliantly and pull the strings to get people to do exactly what they want them to do and go exactly where they want to go. And that's what's happening right now with this coronavirus story. So if you've done any thinking at all about this, and you're listening to what's being said by the authorities and by the media, you might be thinking that things just don't quite add up. Does it seem reasonable to destroy the world economy over a virus that they are telling us is real, that has an extremely low mortality rate and is only wiping out senior citizens or a few with pre-existing health conditions? So if we're to believe what they themselves say, does it seem right to you that they would risk the entire system that keeps everything going to save a healthcare system from being overwhelmed? So we'll tank the world economy and we'll put everybody at risk and everybody in harm's way for a virus that is maybe 0.001% mortality rate, if it even really does exist. That does not seem reasonable to a thinking human being. And if you're thinking that, you're right, because that's not the reason they're doing this. The people that control the world, that have fought to get this system in place and keep it running no matter what, are tanking the world economy and putting people in very vulnerable positions because there is something bigger on the back end. And that something bigger is the catastrophe that is coming soon. What we are experiencing right now is a methodical tightening of the noose on the world's population. We are experiencing restrictions happen in stages, and each week and month that passes, there'll be more restrictions and more things taken away. I mean, we are talking about measures that have never been taken before in modern history. Closing of schools, the closing of non-essential businesses, grounding all domestic flights for the United States, grounding travel for the world, closing countries' borders. All these things are doing irreparable damage to the world's economy. I don't care what they say about the unemployment rate. The people that are out of a job or out of income is astronomical at this point. If you think this is temporary, you're wrong. And even if it was temporary, there will be no getting back to normal. It would take years and years and years, and we don't have that time. Once you understand that all sources of information, all governments, all private sector corporations, that they are all running hand in hand, including Hollywood and television, and that there's one group that controls all of them, pulling all the strings, then you might start to grasp the deception that is being pulled off on humanity right now. Why do you think there have been so many movies on contagions, so many documentaries, so many TED Talks with Bill Gates talking about this years ago? You know, why do you think there's been so many zombie movies? They're talking about contagions, and they're conditioning the people to, number one, believe it'll happen, and number two, expect it will happen, because they need the majority of people to sign off on these measures if they think there's a good enough reason to do it, which doesn't really matter, because even based on what they say, it doesn't warrant the measures being taken. They don't need our approval. They can do it anyway. You're seeing the result of that happening now, but they need people to not revolt. The coronavirus was the perfect plan to achieve their objectives. You have a virus that has a low mortality rate, and all they have to do is just pump out stories on the media to instill more fear, so you don't have people completely freaking out, but you have people scared enough to comply. If you were on my website, you would have known in the very beginning of this coronavirus, you would have known about Event 201 and how that ties into everything. Event 201, or Event 21, was held on October 18th of 2019. It was put on by the Johns Hopkins Center and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This was a tabletop simulated virus pandemic exercise where world health leaders came together and discussed how they would deal with a worldwide pandemic. And it just so happens that the subject of that simulated virus was a coronavirus. Now, they'll be sure to tell you it was not the same coronavirus. It was a different coronavirus. But that was based on a coronavirus nonetheless, and that was just over a month before the first reported case of coronavirus supposedly appeared on December 1st of 2019. If you were on my site, you would have also known on the very same day that Event 201 was being held, October 18th, 2019, the Military World Games were being held. And it was being held in none other than Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the supposed coronavirus outbreak. So on the same day, they had all the military world leaders in Wuhan. Sounds like maybe too much of a coincidence. You have to understand that all this was planned, and it's been planned for a very long time. That people are worried about a one world government. A one world government has existed for decades, if not longer. The deception is that the countries are all run autonomously. And as you see each country take the same measures and fall in line one after another, anybody who's paying attention would realize that there already is a one world government. And those countries are slowly getting their military in place in stages, some countries quicker than others, depending on how armed their citizens are. And they are getting the National Guard, the militaries in place because they know that the chaos is coming. In the United States, they are slowly moving them in to not freak people out. In every news clip on the military and their part in the coronavirus, you will hear the best public relations campaigns that money can buy. You will hear the National Guard is being activated to restock supplies, aid in medical care, build hospitals, and provide neighborly support. The quotes you'll hear said over and over again is, "We are your friends. We are your neighbors. We are your families." But what they're not going to tell you is the true purpose of the military. And I'm telling you, it ain't to deliver toilet paper. In this country alone, we have 15.5 million trucks to deliver food and supplies. The corporations have no problem restocking shelves and delivering supplies. No matter what they say about the medical establishment, we have plenty of doctors and hospitals and nurses. We don't need the military to assist in that. It is a lie to get people to stay calm while they move in the military. And in case you don't know, in the United States, they have activated the National Guard in all 50 states. That is happening now. They want people to get used to seeing military outside a grocery store or walking the streets. And they want you to stay calm about it. But when the supplies run out, and they will run out, either due to the food shortage that's happening because of the weather disasters, or because they withhold the food and supplies, they need the military in place to make sure there's no riots. What do you think the social distancing is being pushed so hard for? It's not being pushed because of a virus. It's being pushed to keep people separated so people aren't in large groups, because large groups feed off each other and there's more of a chance for riots. There's more of a chance for people to like, hey, we didn't agree to this, and revolt to happen. So what do? They use a virus scare and keep everybody in their homes so that people are afraid to be in a group, be with other people, and they can keep everybody manageable. Does it make sense to shut down non-essential business, keep people away from a restaurant or a small clothing store when everybody is congregating in crowds at a grocery store or at Walmart or at Target? the big box retailers that are allowed to stay in business, and they're allowed to stay in business when the individual owners have to close for a reason. You know, everybody can congregate in the areas that they say is okay, but even going out and driving in your car is dangerous because eventually you're going to get out of your car and you might have contact with somebody else. You have to think about this rationally. None of this makes sense if you are buying their story about it. But if you understand the big picture, you know about the catastrophe, you know about the reasons that the controllers would want to do this before that catastrophe, then everything will make sense. They are going to continue to tighten measures and restrict. The reason for that is because they need to have the population in contained areas before the major signs that people will not miss show up as part of the pre-EMPCOE. Those signs are coming. They are on their way, and they can't have chaos. They need people contained before that happens. And that is what we're in now. We're in the process of them getting people exactly where they want them so that they have no other choice than to go to the shelters where there's food, water, supplies, electricity, all those things. Because when those necessities are taken away, they don't have to go rounding up anybody. People will willingly go to those places. They've conditioned everybody to believe that the government is going to save the day, that the governments are going to help people out, and they will, but it's not going to be to your benefit. So everyone's going to look to the world establishments to save them, and that is going to be their demise. The controllers use the media and they use celebrities to pull the puppeteer strings to get people to do exactly what they want them to do. The reason why there was panic shopping is because they created the panic shopping. News clip after news clip showed the rare instance of empty shelves, and they created the panic shopping by causing people to think, oh my gosh, if I don't get to the store right now, I'm not going to get what I need. They did exactly what they were planning to do. They got everybody to rush out and start buying things, thinking that it wouldn't be there. They're going to create the need for soldiers outside of stores and in public areas. They're going to start promoting that people are fighting at stores, that there's riots going on over supplies, and they're going to get people to willingly agree that yes, soldiers should be at stores. Soldiers should be walking around to keep the peace. They make everything happen exactly the way they want by pulling on people's emotions and by manipulating. We told you 2 years ago the two tools used to manipulate a population are fear and guilt. Fear is coronavirus. You're going to get sick. You're going to get somebody else sick. And guilt is you're being irresponsible if you panic shop and if you hoard. And you're being selfish if you don't follow the quarantine measures because, you're causing other people to get sick. Fear and guilt. And the situation that humanity is in right now is deserved, I'm sorry to say, because when you rely on other people to give you the information, when you rely on authority to tell you what's going on and to tell you the truth, and you believe it, I don't care what authority that is, whether it's a government, all the way down to the news media, to somebody you follow on YouTube. When you don't think for yourself, when you don't look for evidence and proof of what is really happening and decide for yourself if it makes sense, and you're going to listen to what other people say, this is the situation you're going to find yourself in time and time again. You know, people think that the truth is a birthright. People think that they are entitled to it. But that's not the case, because if it were, you would have it and you would know exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, we are not handed the truth. We have to work for it, and we have to use energy to think about it. And if you need help with somebody teaching you how to uncover the truth, then you need to pay somebody to do that for you. Not to give you the answers, but to help you see the world for what it really is. And people that did not do that are really going to be kicking themselves, because if you've heard our content, you had every opportunity to do that, and you didn't do it. I've had videos that have over 200,000 views. Brian has a video with over 500,000 views. All those people didn't even recognize the truth when it fell in their laps. So the truth clearly isn't meant for everyone. All those people had exposure to the information we were putting out publicly, and they chose to go elsewhere and never watched again. That is how blinded people are, and that is what a brilliant job the controllers do at confusing people and leading people in the wrong direction. And why am I saying all this now? I'm saying it because it needs to be said, and because this is my last video I'm creating to put out there. And why am I putting this out to you guys now? Is because the sands in the hourglass are running out. Like I said earlier in the video, this is not going to be temporary. The coronavirus might be for a while. They might lay off on it eventually and say, oh, we defeated it. But the measures that are in place because of the position that has put the world in, those are going to stay. And I'll just tell you guys, the blue sky system does not have much time left. The EMPCOE and the major things that are going to precede the EMPCOE are not that far off. Hopefully most of you have figured it out by now. And it's time for me to exit and finish off the rest of my plan. I just want you guys to know that everybody has to sacrifice, and I have made my share of sacrifices. I have tried to talk to people in my life about this. I have tried to warn people, and all it has caused me is pain and suffering, and I have lost people in my life because of the things I tried to show them. But I knew, I never wavered that this was, in fact, the truth. So I had to leave a lot of people behind. And I sacrificed a lot to get where I am at now. But the one thing that I was never going to sacrifice was my chance to make sure that I would go out of this world the way that I wanted to go out. And that I would have every opportunity to survive what's coming, and also make a life and an ability for my kids to survive what's coming. Despite the criticism and the insults and the gossip that went on about me, publicly and in my private life. We told you 2 years ago, when Brian and I first started trying to disseminate this information, that in the end you would know that we were right, and that you will all be sure of, as unbelievable as it will seem at the time, that everything that we have said will come true, is going to come true. And do I wish that people would have listened? Absolutely. But I wasn't going to divert from my path because people wouldn't listen. Everybody is responsible for themselves and their outcomes. So, when the chaos begins, when you're sitting in a shelter completely at the mercy of the people that have been your oppressors, you will think, wow, I had an opportunity to learn and know what was going on and do something about it, and I didn't. And those people, Mia and Brian, who tried to warn me, were actually right after all. But instead, people decided to either send us nasty emails, make nasty videos about us, or just laugh it off like it was some joke. And people mistakenly thought that they could get the truth for free on YouTube or on the internet. And you're finding out now that that's not the case, because even if you have a piece of the puzzle, it's going to make no difference, because you're still going to be in the exact same situation when the end of this comes as you would have been if you had nothing. And Brian and I have been pretty hard on the people that have chosen to sell out. But you have to remember this, that the climate for people to feel like they have to sell out to make their way in the world is because of the choices that people make. So we gave Jay a really hard time because he decided to sell out. He decided to join Bob from Globebusters and do his conference thing that's never going to happen now. If people would have supported his work financially, he wouldn't have felt like he had to do that. Do I agree with his choice and others' choices to sell out? No, it's not what I've chosen to do. But nice words and comments and emails don't pay people's bills. And by the way, while I'm on the subject of Bob from Globebusters, who we've always said is the ringleader of the shill community, he just happened to quit Globebusters and retire from that just a couple weeks before the coronavirus really got into gear. Think he knew something that everybody else didn't? Probably. And in Jay's goodbye video, when he was supposed to leave YouTube before he came back, Bob from Globebusters commented on his live stream saying he'd see him at the conferences. So everything that we said about Jay, although people believed it was harsh, was absolutely correct. But say what you will about Jay, for as much as we have not agreed with his decisions to try and steal our work and profit off it and then go and sell out, at least he's doing something. At least he's not sitting at home watching other people's work and criticizing the work that people have done. He put himself out there and decided to do something about the things that he saw about his world, instead of sitting on the sidelines. And to put yourself out there for the world to criticize is not an easy thing to do. So you have to at least respect him for that. Not the fact that he decided to sell out and, accept the offer of the YouTube shill community. But when you are trying to make your way in the world and people who are watching and benefiting from your work don't support you financially, but they'll give you good vibes, then people are forced to make the choices they make. If you are somebody who has watched my channel, you've supported my work, you've joined my website, and you've stuck with it, those are the people that have made it worthwhile. If you didn't join because you just couldn't afford it, the sad thing is you wouldn't have been able to do much to avoid what's coming anyway. That's just the honest truth. Is if you couldn't afford membership to the sites, then chances are you would not have been able to afford the supplies and the things that you would need and to be able to relocate where you would need to relocate to survive what's coming. And that is not on us. That is just your life situation. And we could do nothing about that. But we could help the people that had a chance. Every decision we made was well thought out and was done for a reason, whether it made sense to the public or not. So YouTube, this is goodbye. I've enjoyed my journey, sometimes more than others. I've done the best that I know how to do, and the rest is left up to fate and destiny. Time has run out, and there's nothing left that I can do, so it's time to go right off into the sunset. That's all I have for you guys today. Everybody, stay safe, be good to one another, and as always, God bless.